In 849, Alfred the Great was born in Wantage, Berkshire. His mother was named Osber. She was described as being a deeply religious woman, and she was the daughter of a man named Oslak, who was, according to Alfred's biographer Asa, the cupbearer of King Athelwulf of Wessex. The man Osber would marry. Athelwulf and Osber would have 6 children together, including 5 sons who would all become king, with Alfred being the youngest. Times were hard for the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms during Alfred's childhood in the 850s. The menace of the Vikings was growing ever stronger. However, this didn't mean the Anglo-Saxons just rolled over. Quite the opposite. In 851, when Alfred would have been just a toddler, the Vikings were defeated in battle in Somerset, but the Saxon kingdoms continued to be hard pressed. That same year, the Vikings sacked Canterbury and then London before forcing the King of Mercia into retreat after he had led an army against them, and the Vikings continued on their rampage. It was now the turn of Alfred's father, King Athelwulf, to lead an army against the invaders. Alongside the king was his second son, Athelbald, and they too joined the Vikings in battle at a site in Surrey, where eventually the Anglo-Saxons were triumphant and inflicted substantial damage on the Viking army. Athelwulf was a busy man, and in 853, after a request from the King of Mercia, he helped lead a successful expedition into Wales. On the completion of this, he returned home. By now, Alfred would have been about 5 years old, and it was at this point his father would send the young boy on a remarkable journey to Rome, where he would meet Pope Leo IV. Alfred did not make the journey alongside his parents, however, although he would return to Rome later on alongside his father, but was taken this time by a company of nobles and common people. Whilst at Rome, Alfred was anointed king by the Pope, which was a largely meaningless gesture. Alfred, after all, still had 3 older brothers, although one, Athelstan, who had been King of Kent, had probably died a couple of years earlier, and there was no guarantee Alfred would ever live long enough to become king in his own right anyway. Indeed, even the long journey home would be riddled with danger for the young boy and his guardians. At some point during Alfred's early years, his mother Osber died. This would have been a sad blow for the young boy. Evidently, he would have had some memories of her though, as the story was told how Osber would read to Alfred and his siblings. On one occasion, she showed them a book of songs, and she challenged her children to memorize it, and whoever did so could keep the book. This would have been done verbally, as Alfred was illiterate until later on in his childhood. Despite this, it appears Alfred, the youngest, and no older than 5 or 6 at the time, won and kept the book. Perhaps Alfred's continued love of learning throughout his life demonstrated both the effectiveness of Osber taking a keen interest in her children's education, but is perhaps also an indicator of the fondness of which Alfred remembered his mother long after she had died. In 855, Alfred returned to Rome. This time he was accompanied by his father. According to Asa, Athelwulf loved Alfred more than any of his other sons. In Rome, Athelwulf and Alfred remained a year. On the journey home, there was more excitement for the young Alfred as he and his father stayed at the court of the King of the Franks and future Holy Roman Emperor Charles the Bald. On their eventual return to Wessex, Athelwulf brought with him Charles's daughter Judith, who would become Alfred's stepmother for a short period of time. On Athelwulf's death in 858, Judith scandalously married Athelbald, Alfred's brother. This second marriage caused widespread controversy. Athelbald had proved he was not afraid to cause controversy. Before his father and Alfred had returned from the continent, he had gone into open rebellion, and Athelwulf agreed to divide Wessex between himself and Athelbald. Athelwulf reigned in the east, and Athelbald in the west of Wessex. However, Athelbald's sole reign as King of Wessex, which began in 858, was not a long or happy one, and he died in 860 after a period of rule which was, according to Asa, full of lawlessness. It appears Athelbald's reputation was suffering in light of his disgraceful marriage to Judith. By the time that Athelbald died, Alfred would have been about 11 years old. As we've already seen examples of, Alfred appears to have had a very good relationship with both his mother and his father. Despite Alfred being illiterate until he was 12, he loved poetry and could, as we've seen with the story of Alfred and his mother, recite and memorize extremely well. He was also a well-mannered child, and he conducted himself in a way that was pleasing to both his parents. He was also a keen hunter, and was highly skilled in the chase, where he enjoyed considerable success. By 860, the life of the 11-year-old Alfred had changed significantly. Both his parents were dead, and two of his brothers had also gone the same way. Although by no means a guarantee, royal power had moved significantly closer to Alfred. When he did eventually succeed as King of Wessex in 871, he would grow to become the most important king in all English history, and his formative years would have been incredibly important in shaping him into the man and king he would become. He would have seen firsthand the dangers posed by the Vikings. The lack of loyalty his brother Athelbald had shown their father would have also been a good lesson for Alfred to learn, and he would have learned all about the fragility of life in the 800s. By the time of his succession, only one of his immediate family, a sister, remained. Alfred as king would have to be brave in this age where death was always close at hand.